team can carry on with number crunching late into the night. We're going to bring forward item 7 to just after public questions and then take the agenda from there. So I intend to allow a couple of minutes for items 1 and 2 and 3. I'm not aware of any public questions at this point in time. 2 minutes for a progress update. 5 minutes each on the forward planning committee's work programme. 30 minutes for the item we're bringing forward on draft budget, but I won't curtail that if there's a lot of discussion. Again, another half an hour to 40 minutes for the cancellation of a tour of Britain, but again, I think that's worthy of scrutiny, so I won't curtail that if there's questions. And 20 minutes on economic recovery, then members' questions. So, any apologies?
Yes, Chairman, we got apologies from Councillor Warren Drew.
Thank you. Everybody happy for me to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Do I have someone propose? And second, thank you very much. There we go. Any declarations of interest? Okay. No public questions. So on to item 7, draft budget proposals. Who wants to take it? No one's jumping forward. If it's better to start with you, Councillor John, start with you and bring in Chris Ward and Kerry as needs be.
Happy to. Well, we had a list of questions that were submitted, quite a lengthy list. I have to say they only reached us for some reason quite late in the day, last Thursday afternoon. And I understand they didn't originate from the members of the committee, but from our scrutiny officer, who was kind enough to draft them, but then presented them with the agreement of yourself, Chair, and the rest of the committee. And we've drafted some answers back to them, hopefully providing you with as much detail as we can, given that we are in the middle of course, producing the budget and doing the analysis on many of these topics. But I'm happy to take any follow-up questions that arise from those answers.
So if you'd like to question based on the information you've got in front of you and anything really to do with the budget and anything you're aware of. So I'll go to Cameron and then Councillor Cook.
I've got a few, if that I may, Chair. The first one is, what are the main implications for town, parish and community councils, and when are we likely to know more about these? We've obviously already been consulted on funding towards the community and voluntary sector, but are we expecting to have any more on that?
The answer is yes, quite a lot. So we've already had a number of interactions with the town, parish and community councils. We have the sessions with iWalk, which we have as part of our exercise on Thursday, I think, of this week, is it? Again, we've also got a reminder going out to the town, parish and community councils, and I believe it's gone this morning, asking them to remind residents on the island of their ability, either online or in paper, to go through the budget consultation exercise, which is running. The replies to that are coming in thick and fast at the moment. A much heavier level of response than we've had in previous years. And I believe so far, we have already exceeded what was a record-breaking year last year. And bearing in mind we have until the end of January, we anticipate that a very large number of replies will come in on it. We've recently updated that following some queries that came in from the parish councils about the ability to add a free flow box at the end of it so that people were not constricted by the answers and the questions on that document, but could add any other further anecdotal remarks or any concerns that they might want to raise into the process. So we thank the parish councils for submitting those through. So I think it's an ongoing process. We're very keen to continue that momentum. We will on Thursday raise more issues with them. And I hope that we can get them on board with many of the issues we've got to face. Clearly, this budget cycle is extraordinary in many ways. I think one of the big issues that's already been notified to us is the desire from some parish and town councils to accelerate some of the discussions on assets and the relationship between them, us and the asset, and how that might assist both the local community and the council at the same time.
The next one, if I may. So obviously the Cabinet Member for Education and Adult Social Care aren't here. So if I may direct them to you, Chris. These portfolios are the biggest, they're the largest. So as the largest portfolios, are those likely the ones most to struggle the most? And whilst I acknowledge these both have major statutory responsibilities, is there any way to give any reassurance that the lifeline non-statutory services won't suffer in this process, as many people do rely on those? Whilst they aren't statutory, many people will, notice the difference if they are gone.
Right, I think that was 4 questions in one, so you win the prize already. So yes, so adult social care and children's services, unfortunately, not here this evening, so I'll do my best to answer on their behalf. The 2 portfolios combined represent about 60% of our budget, so they're very significant. They also include a very large raft of issues which are statutory responsibilities rather than discretionary ones. And in our budgetary discussions so far, although we are aware of the challenges that we face, we are seeking across the board within those 2 portfolios to safeguard all, not only the statutory services, but the quality levels within those statutory services, acknowledging that that will require a greater impact to be absorbed by other areas within the portfolios.
Small ones. So have there been any more conversations about the island deal? As obviously this could have implications for the budget if by some miracle we were to get this.
And I noticed the caveat, if with some miracle. As you're aware, this has been a very long running topic. I believe, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next round is about March, is it? So we're still some way from that next round. Being extraordinarily open and perhaps talking from a personal perspective on this one, I think it would be unwise, given everything that's gone in the past, for us to assume that the Tory government is going to come to our help with a large tranche of funds this year. I think their capacity to actually deal with dispersal of additional resources to local authorities is very, very limited. The Bank of England and others would probably tread on their toes very heavily if they moved in that direction. And so I think what we have to recognise from this very long ongoing discussion is that we as an island need to be self-sufficient. We need to think in a very inward focused way in terms of what our opportunity space is, to develop every opportunity that presents itself to us, and not to expect to find somebody on a white horse coming to our rescue from Westminster. I know others might still hang on to that dream, but I think increasingly we have to be very realistic about it. And certainly when we're looking at the budget process, we can only assume in the budget those things which we have a strong confidence will actually occur. And so that does lead us to be increasingly cautious in that regard. Sorry that doesn't sound very positive, Cameron, but it is an honest perspective.
And finally, have pay rises been agreed and consulted with unions and then budgeted for to prevent future strike action within the council?
Yes, we've budgeted for this year's pay rise.
Councillor Quick.
The first question that came from the this meeting was, is the leader confident that the council can deliver a balanced budget for 23-24? The response has come from Chris Ward. Chris Ward has said it is possible to do so as long as you make the right political decisions. Can we have the assurance that the right political decisions will be made to actually create a balanced budget?
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Quigley. Most definitely we will, and we are researching at this moment in time and reviewing various previous opinions on where we should be travelling. But I'll tell you what, we're working hard to bring forward a legal and balanced budget, which I hope is not political, and I hope which will support all people on this Isle of Wight, no matter what their station, and make sure that we try and support the businesses where we can, and indeed our colleagues in health and the voluntary sector. So yes, I'm sure that we can bring something forward, and the way that things are going at this moment in time, no doubt you and your colleagues will be meeting with us earlier to discuss things along with other members of the Isle of Wight Council and indeed fellow stakeholders out there on the Isle of Wight. Thank you.
Yep.
In the previous 2 years, there has been a significant dip into reserves. Chris Ward has indicated that there is a very limited ability to dip into reserves without going below the £7 million statutory minimum. Is it the intention of the Cabinet to keep the statutory minimum of reserves?
Yes.
Any further questions? One on something you just mentioned, Councillor Stevens, is what do you see still needs to be done to get everyone in the chamber on the same page? Because this looks like it's going to be one of the trickiest budgets for a long time to set. And you made the point but you want it to be not political. What work needs to be done to ensure that happens?
Last year, the Alliance administration brought forward their budget proposals early. This year, we have sought to hold things back so that we can actually make sure that we get the opinions of all within our number, and then we can actually go forward and seek the assistance of others. And once again, you're quite right, Chairman. This isn't about politics, it's about people. This is about society in general on the Isle of Wight. I know people from all sides of the chamber, and I know we're here for the right reason. And that's what gives me confidence to take things forward, non-politically, but in a personal and appropriate manner that befits the Isle of Wight.
Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not entirely sure what Councillor Stevens particularly means by political, because of course it's fairly, it's perfectly legitimate to have different views on how a budget is set. That's what we're elected to do. If he's so averse to being political, perhaps he shouldn't have joined a political group on the council, which is what the Alliance is. I could tell you what I'm doing in order to try and help the council set a budget. I reached out to Councillor Jarman today to ask him to meet, and I'm very grateful he has agreed, and he did the same last year. So Councillor Quirk and I and others in our group will be meeting with him, because we want to do what we can to ensure the council sets a budget. But we may have legitimate disagreement on some of those things. Thank you.
Councillor Lilly.
Just want to raise with question 3. Obviously, that is about the question was about the impact in this year's budget on certain budgets and their sort of deficits. And obviously that is important because that can then affect the budget within that. So I've got two specific questions. One is under adult social care. There's recently been news of new funding, particularly, bigger issue in adult social care is bed blocking and people coming back into back into home from hospital. So very much the two gates, the in gate and the out gate. The government has talked about new funding regarding this. Will this have any effect on the budget, and has there been an analysis of this new funding? I'll then come on to my second one after that.
So yes, we've only got some of the figures yesterday because it was only announced yesterday formally. We had some wind of it coming at the end of last week for what the approach was going to be. The government's approach is an interesting one. I say interesting because it's rather complex issue and a rather simplistic solution. The issue is that we have a cycle of a dearth of care and nursing home places, and we have a dearth of people to staff those places, and we have a dearth of people to deal with domiciliary care in people's homes. Those are quite severe national crises. I heard a figure on the news the other day of about 160,000 places were vacant within that market sector. The suggestion, bearing in mind that the NHS has declared some 13,000, I understand it's not politically correct to call them bed blockers, but people who no longer require in-hospital medical care. I'll put it that way. And if you'll forgive me, I'll call it bed blockers for the rest of my answer. So 13,000 of those in the UK. And their suggested remedy, the policy is to discharge these people into spare residential nursing and care beds. You'll probably be aware that following various declarations, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight have declared that they have no bed spaces within the hospitals because they're all bed blocked. And we did take the opportunity just, I think it was yesterday morning, to see how many beds were free on the island between those two sectors. Now, bearing in mind that that number changes almost hourly by hourly, at one split time yesterday, out of some 850 beds on the island, there were 19 of them that were free at a particular moment in time. That represents an occupancy rate of slightly over 98%, I believe. Now, with that figure in mind, most people would say that if a market sector has a 98% utilization, it's effectively full. Those 19 beds that were free were not necessarily free and suitable for the people who needed to be discharged, nor were they necessarily free on a permanent basis. It may well be that they were free because they were being cleaned because somebody had passed away the previous day and somebody else was moving into them the following day. So in reality, what we have on the island is an enormous under-market provision of residential care. We have an enormous market under-provision of staff resources for those facilities, and a lack of resources to provide domiciliary care in people's homes. Now, I don't believe that those are addressed simply by declaring a government policy to discharge people from the hospital. That might be a very laudable way of dealing with it, and indeed unblocking any part of that circle would free the circle, provided there's somewhere to unblock them to, and on the island we don't have that. So it's not very helpful. It doesn't matter really whether you simply provide money, because money is only a part of the answer. You need people and you need places, and it's the combination of places, people and money which will unblock the system. It also requires a further degree of long-promised integration between the health sector and local authorities. You know, it is not a us and them issue. It's not their problem of bed blocking and our problem of not having enough places. There has to be joined up thinking within that, and there has to be a strategic way of addressing that need. We as an island, I think, have a further compounding issue that our demographics are increasingly bent towards a more aged population with higher needs. And so one could easily argue that a situation which might be universal within the UK is amplified on the on the island, and is further amplified by those deficiencies that we have. So we have a real structural problem here. And I think our current model, where we've given these contracts to 3 mainland providers, and we have differential characteristics with personal assistance and other categorization of people, sometimes in competition with each other, doesn't help that. So it really requires a much more strategic approach with some joined up thinking, an integrated care management system, and a fairly radical reform on the island. Now, many of those things are not under the power of the local authority itself, or even something that we can simply put a line item in the budget and swish it away. These are issues which are going to take a long time to sort out. All we can do at the moment is make sure that we provide the budgeting to secure adult social care and the facilities we have within it. And that's why we've given it such a high level of priority in our budget planning.
Thank you.
next question, Councillor Lilly?
My second question sort of leads on from that really is, there's some very tough decisions about obviously statutory services, but also non-statutory services like leisure. Is there going to be a real analysis of, because as you said, it's not just about money, it's actually about, can we effectively do some of these things in a different way? You know, can there be savings done by being innovative and imaginative and actually sort of running things? So is the administration doing some analysis of things like our leisure services and our adult social care alongside looking at the budget? So when we come to set the budget, if difficult decisions are made, we've actually got some reviews, right, that are actually looking at other ways of supporting our residents and maintaining services.
Yes, I think there are only 3 questions there, so you didn't quite beat Cameron's record so far. The answer is yes. So leisure services is often thought of in a very narrow way, and it's not a narrow thing at all. And of course, there is a bleed through in terms of health elements, which we're very well aware of. We have going on a review of leisure services at the moment. I think it was originally timetabled to get some first feedback from that in December. It's not ready yet. It's a work in progress. We've had a number of issues which have needed to be built into those all options analysis and some of the financial calculations. Even today, for example, we had the figure for the government relief programme beyond March, which affects our utility costs. And clearly, leisure services with the heating of pools are very large users of electricity and gas and other provisions. So that analysis is underway. It's an all options one. And I think it requires, as you pointed out, an innovative approach. We can look at models on the island where leisure services have been sustained and indeed well established within West White. Not that I want to promote the West White unduly in this forum, but let's promote the West White because the West White Sports and Community Centre has been very effective in taking over responsibility, in galvanising the local community in terms of contributions from the parish and town parish councils, by having a large number of people who donate their time to that service, and by general fundraising. And they managed to sustain themselves very well without any, long-term ongoing subsidies from other quarters. They're also very good at attracting grants. They have a good team at doing that. So I think the all options analysis of leisure services needs to encompass all of the possibilities for sustaining it going forwards. And whether that involves going out to the community, being a separate company, or being an arm's length trading relationship with the council, or retaining it within the council, all of those are quite, potential options.
Any further questions? Okay, I think there's still a lot of work to be done in the background on the budget, so I'm not surprised that there's silence at the moment. I don't think there'll be silence next time round. Okay, thank you. Thank you to those of you that were available just for this. Kerry and Chris, if you need to get off, please do. Item 5, progress update. Any concerns on there's only a couple of items on there. On the progress update, or anyone? We are having the informal briefing, I believe, arranged this month on the floating bridge. Is one of those issues, which I still believe is the case. Yeah. Okay, moving on to forward plan. Anything that we think would deserve forward scrutiny from the council work plan that's not already in our committee work plan? Anything? Councillor Quirk?
Just one thing really, and that's the budget is a major exercise. I've heard it rumoured that this group may get the full budget just a few days before the final deadline. Something as big as the budget, you do really need to have time to scrutinise. If you're being open and transparent, you have to allow people time to scrutinise the stuff you're coming up with. So I know we're going to have a meeting in the future to sort of talk about this, but all members should have the opportunity to scrutinise and then bring their thoughts back to this meeting. I would encourage you to give us as much as possible, as soon as possible.
Sorry, can I come in just to
Councillor Stevens, by all means.
address Councillor Quirk's concerns? As soon as it's possible, we shall be furnishing all members with the information. What I would say is that the back behind the scenes, as your leaders said, and it's not political, that we actually work together to try and bring forward some joint suggestions and ways forward that we can bring forward a positive budget. And so it won't be just that it's publicised that we're out there talking. It we'll be working behind the scenes, but it'll be dealt with as soon as possible. And I know that Councillor Jarman will be moving that forward. Thank you.
Cameron?
I was just going to ask if we could have the report that Councillor Jarman mentioned about the leisure centres on our forward plan, and also within our work plan, if it's possible to receive an update on the island plan, as that's obviously something that's ongoing, and if a report could come back, or if we could have a verbal update on that.
Councillor Lilly? I'll do then, you can stop. Councillor Spring?
I notice on the forward plan that in February, we're going to be looking at the disposal of potential housing sites in East Cowes. But I also note that there may not be much for us to scrutinise because it's going to follow the same procedure pretty much as the disposal of Kingston Marine, in that the expressions of interest are have been submitted as commercial and in confidence, and therefore will be put in an exempt appendix. It does seem to me, and I would ask perhaps that corporate scrutiny considers the following: the fact that a person expresses an interest, claims commercial confidentiality, does not actually mean that it is. And may we have a written explanation setting out how it satisfies confidentiality. Secondly, my understanding is that the correct procedure is not for the confidential material to be contained in an annex and the public held in meeting, but kept in suspense, as it were, as to what's in the annex. The correct procedure, in my understanding, is that the cabinet meeting should be held in public where it concerns the non-confidential matters, and then go into private where it concerns confidentiality. And I would ask that why cannot, and could we have a written explanation as to why cannot the same procedure apply to corporate scrutiny? And the only basis I would suggest that that couldn't apply is if the material has actually is so confidential that it's inappropriate to disclose to councillors. Now, it's very limited. I had experience, I know it's anecdotal, but I had experience recently where I asked for something. I was told I couldn't have it. I said, why not? And I was sent a solicitor's letter, and the solicitor's letter, in fact, was only claiming confidentiality as to the public, not as to councillors. So I asked for it and got it. So I would like a clear and I would ask the committees to ask for a clear reasons for why it's said to be confidential, why the policy of holding it in private for the confidential matters is not being followed. Is it confidential even for councillors generally, and in particular those on corporate scrutiny? And if not, why can't we follow the prescribed procedure, which is to hold the confidential part of our meeting in February in private?
Yeah, we can obtain an answer to those questions, Councillor Spink. Councillor Robertson.
just following on from that, Chair, I also would not like to see a repeat of what happened with Kingston Marine, in particular, that this committee was told it couldn't even know what sector was interested in buying that Kingston Marine. And 3 days later, it was splashed all over the media with the buyers posing for photos on the Downs. Nothing had changed between corporate scrutiny cabinet and that press release. The council had not signed a head of terms. It was not bound to sell to those particular buyers. Neither did the buyers have a right to it. It's possible that that still hasn't happened. So I'm really concerned that there was nothing particular, or if there was, it wasn't properly explained as to why we couldn't be told, but the public could have a big splash from the buyers 3 days later.
Councillor John.
Sorry, not really my role to intercede, but I think there's a good point here. And I think the point isn't only for corporate scrutiny. I think there should be a clear policy for all committees. It would be wrong to define a policy that was limited to one committee out of the many that we have. We should have a very clear and consistent policy for all such groups. So perhaps if you don't mind me amplifying the point that's been made, and perhaps we could ask those who are present, in, I'm sure Paul and Wendy and others, to take that issue away and define a proposal that they can bring forward for a clear policy for all committees and publicly attended forum within the council, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Quirk was first, then Councillor Lilly.
Just on one point about all committees, although Scrutiny Committee and Audit Committee are not statutory committees, what they do, their function, is a statutory requirement. That doesn't apply to all committees. And so for audit and for corporate scrutiny, there are requirements that actually you shouldn't have secrets. That's what the law says. And even with things like the floating bridge, the chairman should be in on it. So I don't think you can say it's for all committees. I think there is a difference in terms of audit committee and corporate scrutiny committee.
Councillor Lilly, is it a question?
I was going to add to something, a question I'd asked previous meeting, which was about the issue of delegated decisions, which thank you, Mr. Thistlewood has actually given an answer to. But one of the things I think came out of that is it's important that all members know that they have rights to call in. There is a process to actually call in decisions, and those call-ins would come to this committee. And I am concerned that from previously in the electoral term from 2017 to 2021, this committee was probably dealing with about 4 call-ins a year, if not more. And then after 18 months, we actually haven't had any call-ins. And I think that we need to look at training and getting information out to all, because I think a lot of new councillors don't actually know of that process, and to know where they can find some of the decisions that are made that actually don't come through the process. And I think we have a duty to make sure that we have that, so that members can do that, particularly if it is affecting their wards, and they, you know, there needs to be, because to me, a call-in is quite a healthy process. It means that we spend time on that one particular issue and actually scrutinise it to actually come up with answers to make sure it doesn't happen again, or within that. And I think that, and for a call-in to be agreed, you as the scrutiny chair have to sign it off. It has to have another member from the scrutiny committee. So it has to go through a process. It also has to go through the monitoring officer. So if it actually comes to a call-in, it's normally a legitimate reason that it needs to be discussed. And I think we just need to inform members more about these particular rights, because I'm absolutely flabbergasted that we haven't had call-ins in the last nearly 2 years.
Yeah, we can deal with that. But Councillor Brodie, then Councillor Quirk.
The fact of the matter is that during the last administration, who had a propensity for making most of their decisions by the delegated process, each of those decisions would be advertised to every member of this council to give them the opportunity to arrange for a call-in, which is why you had a significant number of call-ins. Under this administration, I assume that they're still committed to the vast majority of decisions not being made under a delegated process. But the fact is some decisions have been made under that, and we haven't always been advised of them. That is probably why there have been no call-ins at this committee whatsoever. So I think it's imperative that you, as the chair, discuss this with the monitoring officer to ensure that a process is in place so that every member of this council is fully aware of the decision making that may have been made on a delegated basis rather than the public forum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brodie. That's a fair point. Councillor Quirk.
I was going to raise very much the same point, that it's delegated decisions that are called in, and the council, so the cabinet, whether to avoid calling or for its own reasons or because it wants to make all decisions in the total cabinet, has not made very many delegated decisions. But some have been made, and you have to sort of really struggle to find them.
Yeah, noted. Thank you for that. Back to the forward plan. Anything else on the forward plan? The only thing I can see that may be worthy of an explanation, if not forward scrutiny, is the item on council tax premiums on second homes and empty properties, because I don't believe it's as easy or as straightforward as everyone thinks it is. So that might be worthy of an explanation at some point to this committee. Work programme. Anything on the committee's work programme? Anything needs to be moved, adjusted, added?
Yeah, I'll take my leave if you're all right.
By all means.
All the budget's been done.
By all means. Thank you, Councillor Jarman. Have a nice evening. If you make it through the wind and the rain. Oh, well done. Anything on the committee's work plan? No? Excellent. So moving on then to item 8, cancellation of the tour of Britain. I'm sure this will be lively. How do we want to do this, committee? Do you want to just ask questions of the relevant cabinet member, or do you want somebody to take it and give a brief overview?
Chair, the reports in front of members, I take it they've read it all.
Okay, so if you want to ask questions based on Councillor Quirk.
The first question is the council out of pocket because of this, the cancellation?
As report states, yes. However, there has been investment that we hope to take advantage of in future, because as the report says, and we are still negotiating with the sweet spot, and our intention is to resume having a stage of the tour of Britain in future. So that's our position. We're still negotiating.
Okay, for cancellation, the contract says that at the earliest opportunity, that should be making good. And it says that it's only if there's a force majeure that they're not liable to pay us the money back or do something. This appeared to be a voluntary decision. Some sports bodies continued their activities, some didn't. They decided not to. I've heard it rumoured that it was because the police wouldn't provide the outriders. If that's true, the police are obviously liable because they obviously have a contract to provide the outriders. Can you just give us an explanation of exactly what is going to happen?
Just refer you to point 31.2 in the contract, where it talks about the force majeure event, and that's what we're doing at the moment. We're using all reasonable endeavours to mitigate the effects of such a delay. So we're looking to host a stage in the future, so we can capitalise on the investment that's already happened. That's the position that we're looking. That's what's in the contract.
You're saying we, but surely it should be they that should be saying we will do this.
Well, we are talking to Sweet Spot, as we have done ever since, obviously, the sad death of our monarch, which led to the cancellation of the event. And you know, it's extremely disappointing. It's probably not the right word. I mean, if you all remember that Sunday, it was absolutely stunning day, beautiful day. And the first thing I did was email Mr. Minns just to give my share my sort of distress, I suppose, with that it hadn't gone ahead because of all the work that had gone on, the investment that had gone on. So it's a tragedy on many levels, but we are in the situation where we're looking to host in the future, and that's what's really important here. From my perspective, we still want to host the major event. The decision to make this decision. Sorry, I've got a bit of a chesty cough at the minute. The decision to host the event in the first place was made back in 2020, if you recall, and then was actually delayed because of COVID. So there's already been a situation where we weren't able to capitalise on it, you know, straight away with the investment that we've done. But we know we still had cyclists come over that weekend. We're now on the cycling scene, if you like. There'll be a report from Visit Isle of Wight into it because they were our partners, our delivery partners in this. I don't know if anyone was here. I think you were, Councillor Quirk. You heard Will Miles from Visit Isle of Wight describe that actually already had some benefits from just being a stage, as it were, because people had already booked to come over, still came over, and they're going to be exhibiting at a cycling event soon. So we're kind of like, we're on the scene, as if you like. So we, you know, at this moment in time, yeah, it's not looking, you know, the balance sheet looking great, but we've done a lot of investment. A lot of the team have put so much work into it, so they know what to do. We're working with our partners at Island Roads, you know, for the road closure. So we know what to do. There's a lot of investment that we can still capitalise on. Is what my message is to you. So, you know, Corporate Scrutiny have asked for this report, and that's what we provide. Just a snapshot in time, as requested, but we haven't finished our work on my side of the table, if that makes sense.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Councillor Jones-Evans, you said that the council and the other party were trying to resolve issues on clause 31.2, but has the council accepted this as a force majeure event? Because I don't think it is. I think to me, it looks quite straightforward. It's a breach of contract and the council's lost money under it. And I think the council needs to be robust in its response. And so my question is the council accepting it as a force majeure event, or is it contesting that?
Just to defer, because it's obviously a very important legal point, but my understanding was it has been declared a force majeure, but Mr. Rowan will give you chapter and verse.
I'd confirm that, and also that we're not doing it alone as the Isle of Wight Council. We're also doing it with other local authorities that were affected by the cancellation of the event as well. So I think Gloucestershire County Council is one of the other parties. There are a number of others as well that have undergone the same thing. And we're not leaving it like that. We are continuing to pursue it. But at the moment, the advice we're getting is that it was a force majeure event.
Okay, could I ask, I mean, what prospects do you think there are for recovering any sort of money under this, not necessarily by way of a lump sum of money, but sort of rescuing the relationship and seeing that something that comes out of it?
Relationship's fine, but Mr. Minns is on the front line discussing this, so I'll defer to him if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you, councillors. The relationship between Sweet Spot and ourselves is a very good one. They are very keen to see the Isle of Wight host a stage of the tour in the future. The only slight difficulty we've got, and is perfectly overcomable, is that for us to be able to stage a stage of the tour, it has to be either the start or the finish because of the nature of the travel arrangement. To be perfectly honest, that would be one of the they're the two premier stages anyway, so we would be very interested in doing one or the other. So we are in negotiations with Sweet Spot about staging those. They are also the most popular, but they get booked quite a long time in advance. So for next year, they've already got commitments, but we may be looking at a future tour to try and stage a start or the finish. So the original objective and the reason it was a regeneration activity, And the original objective was to generate £4 million for the local economy. And that still has to be, I would suggest, our priority in trying to get another stage back to the island.
In just being a member of the public, in questions I want to know is why was it not covered by insurance? I know you've got an answer to that. Sweet Spot making it clear they weren't going to pay the money back. What was the reaction? Because, you know, my reaction would be, what's to stop another set of wide boys, and please don't take this as what I think, walking in through the council's very big glass doors and saying, I've got an event for you, but by the way, you're not getting any money back. But also, most importantly, what have we learned in terms of next time round?
I'll just come back on the Sweet Spot thing. Sweet Spot are an international company. They actually run the tour of Britain on a regular basis, so they're a bona fide organisation. Lots and lots of references from successful occasions when they've run the event in the past. It's one of those instances where something that was completely unforeseen came along, and unfortunately, like COVID, we were the victims of that, unfortunately, as a council, together with the other councils that were involved at the time. It is a big trend within sporting events that these organisations who have arranged these events nationally, they'll come to a local authority or to a group of local authorities and say, we run these events, we think there's a real economic benefit and value to this, and the local authority's got to make that decision, which in this case was the previous administration, but I think this administration would have made the same decision, of the economic benefits and the value of putting the island on the map. And it's just unfortunate in this occasion that we've been overtaken by events.
And as far as what we've learned, you know, we've actually got a wealth of experience now about, you know, how to put one of these events on, because we were, you know, about set to go. I mean, it was Friday afternoon, wasn't it? I believe that we got the full call at 4 o'clock. So we were like, you know, less than 48 hours away from pressing start. So all that experience won't be lost, and it's really helped members of our team grow. And just want to use this opportunity to say thank you to all of the councils, because this was actually across the council you know, event really, because we had many members of our council, including members from comms, different democratic services, different teams coming over and doing voluntary work as well. So it was a massive effort. So it's a great shame for everyone. We should really recognise all the work that was done voluntarily, and of course it's all business as usual. So, you know, you talk about sort of what we learned, what we've lost. There's all, you know, put all this effort into this event. It didn't happen, but then we weren't doing other stuff we should have been doing, our business as usual. So it's very difficult to quantify. But we have learned a great deal. But, you know, as Mr. Rowan just said, it's about that wider economic benefit, which is a function that the council should be doing.
Alex.
Yeah, sorry, I just put my hand up. Just something I didn't say. I mean, what they are clear to do in terms of compensation is to work with us. Now, each of these events that takes place has a staging fee. So, you know, for this particular event, the staging fee was 250,000, which is what we pay Sweet Spot to run and bring the event to the island. They are quite happy to negotiate with us in the future if we were choosing to have another stage to work on, obviously, an offer to us that's an awful lot less than that. But the details of that will come out in the discussions, but that would be the compensation we would receive if that was successful.
And in terms of clarification around insurance, because it's a question that's been asked, just in terms of why would insurance not cover the losses?
Well, the Sweet Spot Group are insured as a cycle internet under the UCI regulations, and that is considered by them and the UCI to be force majeure, so they were covered, and we would have been entitled to some compensation in terms of anything they hadn't spent up till that day. But because it was 48 hours before, the full cost of the event was, you know, there were no further costs. The event was on its way here. There were some minor things that we've looked at, but nothing major.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie, then Councillor Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. Just Mr. Rowland said that it was an event that was unforeseen. Can I ask whether, if any future organisation is set up, provision will be made for the possibility of a future elderly head of state passing away during such an event? Thank you.
I think it's something we'll look at if you're talking about a lesson to be learned, but I'm not entirely sure in answer to that question whether we could actually cover that.
It seems to me unforeseen. I mean, with great respect here, we were talking about the passing away of a head of state who was in her mid-90s. Surely that should have been covered for by the insurance provision provided for the Isle of Wight Council. Thank you.
Councillor Quirk, then Councillor Lilly, then Councillor Robertson.
It sounds as if they've declared it a force majeure themselves. Quite a number of sporting bodies didn't respond in the same way, didn't cancel things. That was a decision that they made. Have you taken any legal advice as to how sound, and what was the legal advice?
We've got written advice that they consider it to be a force majeure event from our own internal legal team, yes.
Councillor Lilly, then Councillor Robertson.
I think that your particular point about lessons learned and asking the question, I think there was a lot of activity. I was definitely involved and saw a lot of things in Rye months before the event that actually had a lot of people learning to ride a bike that hadn't before. That you actually had registering bikes, you had recycling. What would be very good is if that could be documented, because there was a huge amount of activity that actually was built up. And I think we need to celebrate that. I mean, after the event, I attended at Ride Rowing Club a big presentation of young people in schools that had designed flags, had designed the award, and there was a huge amount of involvement. And I think we need to celebrate that actually we showed as a community that we could do a national event and actually involve, all the schools were involved at all levels involved this. And that doesn't go to waste. There was some within that. And I think it would be useful to have a short report on that work. And I know that I can't remember the name of the officer, but wonderful officer that did the work, did a huge amount of work out in the community that involved. And I would think there was a huge increase in awareness and involvement in cycling, which goes towards our outcomes on active travel and carbon footprint and everything. And we shouldn't actually, we need to actually highlight that. It was a very sad event, but there were some very good positive things that came out.
Yeah, happy to take that on board, Councillor Lilly, and perhaps it can be a sort of part of the Visit Isle of Wight report, the look back and what we achieved. So the land art you talked about and all that, so that bikeability stuff. That's it's so important, and putting us on the map as a a place where sustainable travel is really, really important. And I just again, the professionalism which was shown in the way that we were putting this event on was outstanding. I had absolutely, as a cabinet member, I had no qualms at all that this was going to be a fantastic event. The way all the whole year and more probably that was taken to put the event on was done. We've done us proud for sure.
Councillor Robertson, Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to check we're not talking at cross purposes about insurance and insurers' position. I mean, I can quite understand that the insurers for Sweet Spot might say it's a force majeure because insurers tend not to want to pay out unless they have to, and they'll make the argument. But what about any insurance we've had in place? Does the council not have insurance in place for contracts that don't go ahead?
I think that obviously this was done under the previous administration. The contract was consulted on, and at the time it wasn't considered that we take out insurance because it's not our event. We're paying a fee to run an event on our roads. It's not our event. Had it been our event, that may have been different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert in insurance, but not necessarily specific insurance for this event, but general insurance for contracts that are lost and cause the council to have spent money that they can't recover. I mean, is no general insurance. The council must have large insurance cover for all sorts of provisions. I'm not necessarily talking about event insurance. I'm talking about provision for lost money through contracts that I would still argue has been breached. And that would be an argument for us to have with our insurers, not with the insurers of the other party.
We'll come back, Councillor Robertson, on clarity on that, because we have discussed it with our legal colleagues. So we will come back with some.
So I then got Councillor Lever, Councillor Spink, and then Councillor Lindley.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies if I've just missed it from the pack, but do we have an estimate on when we will know if we have a stage confirmed, or assuming talks are ongoing now?
I think it's the issue is, as Mr. Min said, it's about us hosting the start or finish. So it's maybe 2024. That's what we're looking at, but maybe after that. But that's because of where we are and the type of terrain we have. It's really, that's why it has to be. So that's why it's more difficult, because those ones go quickly. So they're the premier spots, as it were. But we'll get one as soon as possible, obviously. Is that, what's your question?
Yeah, it was just because in my mind I assumed that because they are premier spots that Sweet Spot would have them confirmed. So I'm assuming they've got a list and they know when the next available is. So are they looking at the next available, or because of what's happened, are they thinking that they can bump us earlier and in conversation with perhaps people that had already reserved those places to move them because of?
I'll defer to Mr. Minns, but of course there's contracts that have got contracts with those people as well. So it's when a spot comes free. But
I can add to that. I mean, normally what they do is they obviously book those particular slots quite far in advance. They also need to bear in mind that they don't just suddenly do a stage miles away from all the other stages. So it's normally part of a route. So on this particular occasion, it went through, as Colin said, Gloucestershire, and it came through Dorset for the first time, which was one of the reasons why it then came to the Isle of Wight, because they haven't got to move the riders as far and obviously all the infrastructure. So the discussions that we need to have with Sweet Spot are going to relate to the fact that start and finishes are very popular, but it's got to be part of a natural route around the country as well.
Councillor Spink and then Councillor Lindley.
Thank you, Chair. It's been reported, just so we could have a figure in the press, that the loss at the moment is 350,000 or thereabouts. Are you able to confirm that's the loss? I understand that's 250,000 to Sweet Spot and 100,000 in other expenses. Yeah, so it's 350,000 is the potential loss to the council if we don't, for example, run another event. So if we don't run another event, then we're writing that 350,000 off effectively. It's presumably the case.
Yes, 350,000. 250,000 was for Sweet Spot to stage the event, as Alex mentioned earlier, and the 100,000 was for the traffic regulation orders and the other costs that were outside of the day-to-day activity that we carry out as local authority. And yes, if we don't run another event, effectively we've lost that money.
just for clarity for the members, it's paragraph 8 in your papers.
I appreciate that. Looking at the paragraph before that, if I can just ask, please, at the top of the page, paragraph 7 at the top of the page. I haven't, I must confess, waded all through the Sweet Spot agreement, but I just wondered if you could help me where, because I couldn't on a quick look find it, where the part here in paragraph 7, it says the contract that the council had in place with Sweet Spot entitled it to a refund, but only of host venue fees after real costs had been deducted. Can you help me with where in the agreement that is? Because I couldn't find it on looking at it. Okay, it would help me because I want to do a little bit of research on this, and I don't particularly want to have to read the whole agreement to find it. I spent a bit of a while and just couldn't see that. No, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I do have just a couple more questions, if I may. You've said
page 29 to 34 is all about termination. That's helpful.
I think I did read that and didn't spot the same provision. It's the provision about that Sweet Spot have to repay the contract for fee, so that's the 250, but only after host venue fees have been deducted. The real costs of host venue fees have been deducted. That's the issue, really. But moving on, because I'm quite happy with a written response. If our internal legal department have advised on force majeure and presumably advised on the damages that would be entitled to under force majeure, could this committee have a copy of that legal advice, please? Thank you. And the final thing is, I don't understand paragraph 14, which is does that relate to of the report? Does that relate to the next contract for the Tour of Britain, or is it the current contract which was didn't take place because of a force majeure? Because it says that contract, I think it must be for the one that was affected by the force majeure. It says it's been reviewed to determine the legal implications, which may well be of considerable relevance. But again, on my confidential campaign, as it were, this item has been provided by a third party, Sweet Spot, and is confidential on the grounds of commercial confidentiality. Well, if it helps to determine the legal implications, is it really commercially confidential, and ought not this committee to see it?
I think I can probably clarify that in terms of for both those questions and the previous one as well. The contract has been considered to be commercially confidential right from the start. The appendices that you're looking at is not the contract with Sweet Spot. It's the contract for the sponsorship agreement with Sweet Spot, not the actual running of the event. So I think we'll find when we consult, well, I know we'll find when we consult the legal agreement for us to stage the tour with Sweet Spot, we'll find that in the confidential agreement. And the second agreement, as it says, is the agreement with sponsors. The confusion has come about because when we went out to tender for the company that were going to provide us with the sponsorship, it was won by a different division of Sweet Spot, the same company.
If you look at page 41, the agreement says related to the sourcing of sponsorship monies for cycling events, including the final stage of Tour of Britain 2022. 41 of the whole, but well, I'm looking online, page 41 of the whole bundle.
Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Lilly. But is it a question?
It's a question and a point, really. The reality is this contract was agreed by the previous Conservative administration. If we want this committee to go into more scrutiny of it, I think we need to call the former cabinet member, Mr. Wayne Whittle, and the former leader of the council, former Councillor Stewart, to be able, because they were part, right, of the negotiations, saw all the presentations, and agreed to they would have agreed the paperwork at the cabinet. It was signed off just before the election in 2021. So if we're going to go further on this, then do we have powers? This is my question, to call former members back? Because unless we do, right, and I perhaps advise that if the Conservatives wish to pursue this, they go and talk to their Conservative Party members who actually made the decisions. Because the way I see it is the current administration has had to pick up and deal with the contract. So the questions perhaps raised about making sure that if we got an elderly monarch and it dies and everything, that should have been under the risk analysis of the previous administration. Can we move on?
We don't have the power, and I'll quickly allow Councillor Robertson and Quirk, as long as you're both quick, to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure Councillor Lilly quite understands the exchange that's been having. There's no suggestion there's defective paperwork. What I'm doing is questioning whether the council has not been robust enough in recovering money under the paperwork, in that it may have written off 350,000 unnecessarily rather than pursued that money under some perfectly effective paperwork. That's the questions I've been asking. I'm grateful for the responses and I look forward to the written responses. Thank you.
Councillor Quirk.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the contracts. I suspect that the current administration would have signed one that was very, very similar. The issue is whether the interpretation of force majeure, whether they're going to do the right thing and actually come good and give us a replacement thing without making us pay another £300,000, and whether there is a case that the force majeure could be challenged, because quite a number of sporting bodies took a completely different decision. So it's not absolutely crystal clear that it is a force majeure.
Any final response? No. Councillor Stevens.
As the deputy leader and the acting leader for a few days, I thought I might as well come in and put the leader's point of view across, that we agree that the contracts were the best that we could do. We're not, you know, there's no doubt about the way that the undertaking was taken forward. So I think the contracts are sound from the previous administration, and if we didn't, we'd have shouted before now. What I will say is that activity is current and looking to achieve results. Until that time, I think that, you know, from the leadership's point of view, we would prefer to let the staff, officers, get on with the job of trying to retrieve whatever we can retrieve and then come back and report back to you. But I think that, you know, across administrations, taking into consideration what's been mentioned, but I totally agree with Councillor Quirk that the contracts were as good as we could get at the time, and that's it. The only query I would say is that the initial decision was made on the provision that we got £350,000 worth of sponsorship, which we didn't. But having said that, we know that was a possible decision that was made. Could have been because of the election. It doesn't really matter. It was done for the Isle of Wight, and it was done for the right reasons. So I'll leave it at that. But can we make sure that when we try and pursue these costs and the recovery of the same, that we make sure that we don't cause a problem to those people that are going out and negotiating at this time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to item 9, economic recovery. Thank you for the answer to the questions. Now is the best way to ask questions again based on the report and ask for any highlights you might want to, rather than reading through the whole thing. So any questions? Thanks, Councillor Brodie. Be careful in that weather, it doesn't sound very good. Any questions? No, by all means, Councillor Quirk, don't be worried.
items 10 and 11 about the board and the strategy. It appears that we've got a plan that isn't based on any sound funding. And how can you really have a plan? I mean, you can have a strategy that isn't based on sound funding, but I'm not sure you can have a plan that's based on sound funding, because it's just all pie in the sky, and it's a wish list. And some of it, if you're bringing in partners who are commercial partners, they probably do have access to funding, sort of just from a bank overdraft. And maybe we should be defining what in a plan, what the sources of funding, or what the likelihood, if it's all requires government bids, then you're going to lose 3 out of 4. So that's not a plan. I think you need to have something that says a strategy and how you approach it. But I'm a little bit concerned that there's nothing solid there. It's built on moving sands, and it's very vague as to who's going to be accountable and held accountable. If you want something to happen, somebody has to be accountable. And a committee isn't a good way of having accountability. I'm just concerned that there's a looseness to it that it won't deliver as it stands. And maybe I seek reassurance.
And you'd be absolutely right to do that, Councillor Quirk. The context of what local government can do in an economic development setting is always going to be limited. The private sector, clearly, by definition, is seeking to bring forward economic growth, create more jobs, create more wealth. The council's role is to create that environment for that to take place, and to ensure that all the supporting infrastructure that might be there to enable growth is effectively deployed. So whether there's a good skills base within a community, whether there's a good range of property that businesses might take advantage of. But you're right, in any plan and in any strategy and then subsequent plan, the way in which those objectives are then realised need to be honest and need to be relevant to the current climate. I think, as the paper indicates, given obviously the impact of the pandemic, and also the way in which our economy has developed in recent years, actually updating and refreshing the plan is always an important thing to do. And this is purposely done on a short period of 3 years, because we are in, I'm sure we all recognise, a fast-moving global economic environment, not least in terms of the UK economy. So in that regard, having a short window in which you sense check what you're doing, take stock of whether you've been effective, and also then adapt and improve what you're doing in subsequent iterations is really important. And that's where we are now. I think it's fair to say the efforts we've made in helping create the business environment with that infrastructure support, with that attention to detail on skills, has been effective and progressive in this last 3-year period. But I think what the pandemic has taught us is some really important lessons about the Isle of Wight's economy, actually how resilient it is, and how, in terms of the diversity we have in our economic makeup at the moment, between some very high level specialised industries, but also a very strong foundational economy in terms of health and social care and the tourism sector, that we've got a good base on which we can progress. I think just some brief figures really in terms of business survival, for example. I think in that period from March 21 to 22, we actually saw an increase in businesses starting up as micro businesses on the island, and also in small businesses, actually seeing a small increase there as well. So I think the efforts the council undertook on behalf of the government to distribute those COVID support grants, ensure that as many companies came out the other end of that process intact and fit for purpose really in terms of moving forward, has shown its worth. Whether we see that again in another 12 months on the back of obviously the challenges we're now seeing in the global economy and in terms of cost of living issues for businesses, we'll have to obviously keep a very close eye on that. But I will take exception to the point on the board.
partnership in terms of skills, and also those business representative organisations that we have on the island, the Chamber of Commerce and the Federation of Small Business. It's absolutely vital to actually conducting and progressing an effective economic development strategy. They are closest to the voices of their members and their businesses on the island. So they having an input to shaping and developing and implementing the plan is absolutely crucial for us. And that will continue to be this administration's approach in terms of updating the plan itself. So I think 2022 has been a difficult year, as we know, both politically and economically. And I think, from the island's perspective, we have cause for optimism in terms of our future approach that we've managed to sustain. Going into the pandemic, I think in highlighted in our regeneration strategy, we saw the opportunity afforded by our digital infrastructure investment. We also saw the opportunity being afforded by the Council's commitment to the climate emergency and identifying green growth and green economy as a really important area for further development. And I think in this next iteration, which obviously we'll share with Scrutiny when it comes to Cabinet later this year, we'll be able to show and evidence how we'll remain fleet of foot and how we'll still remain to be agile, recognising some of these key opportunities, but also continuing challenges.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ashton. Thank you, Councillor Quirk, for your observations and questions. So much of what we do, because we're not a wealthy authority, is reliant on government grants, and obviously government changed their minds, you may have noticed, about what their priorities are, and particularly, in the area of economic regeneration, it's moved away from the LEPs, where we used to work with them we still work with them closely, but in a different way now. And there's the levelling up, obviously, and then the shared prosperity. I just want to disagree with my colleague who's now left, Councillor Jarman, because I don't believe the island deal is a dream. It's not a dream, it's our right. We have articulated our need to government very, very clearly for the last 7 years now, having government ministers come down here. We have done everything, as they've asked, the Treasury's asked us to do, to articulate in all different ways to try and count the different sums. Every time we do the sums, it actually comes up more. We deserve this funding as an island. So we are as resilient as we can be, and we will still work towards that, but we deserve proper funding. Our people deserve proper funding, and I, for one, will not give up that fight. Now, shared prosperity, we were expecting, silly us, about 18 million. When it came through the door, what our allocation was 1.1 million, and then 660,000 for the adult learning for numeracy. I was just utterly shocked, because I just couldn't understand how this could replace the funding, European funding that we were promised. And there's some bizarre way they've calculated it. So we got 1.1 million. But I did a little bit of maths at the time, because I was quite interested to see what other areas the country got. So ours works out roughly like £7.50 per head of population, the investment. In Bradford, they got £29.50. Wrexham got £95 per person, and County Durham got £34.50, and Southampton got £5.90. So we really are discriminated against, if you like to say that. I mean, I'm just speaking as me now in the job that I'm doing on behalf of the island. So, we're not on a level playing field at all. And we are doing absolutely our best to bring as much funding as we can and to max out the funding that we do have. We do a lot of research into how we should spend the funding that we do get. And this is an allocation, don't forget. We still had to write a prospectus to the government. They had to agree that yes, we were matching their outcomes, which were many. So we are doing everything we can, Councillor Quirk, but we're not a wealthy authority. We don't have millions in the bank that we can just bring down and decide yes, we're going to go for that. We've got projects we're working on, and that's one reason when the Alliance administration came in, we didn't actually change course. We just, because regen is a long burn. You've got millions of pounds that have been invested, and we carry on with those projects because they're important. It's an important use of money, and they've had all the work done to prove they're a good way forward. The only thing we have done differently, I guess, is looking at the cultural regeneration. That's quite new, but again, that's coming up nationally. And again, the SOLEP, they're working to on that theme as well. So apologies, Chair and Councillor Quirk, for my impassioned response, but you know, we deserve better.
Yep, by all means.
Just as an observation, we've got Kingston Park approved, but no one wants to be there. If we had the benefits of the Freeport actually applied in terms of the tax breaks and etc. There, we might well have people more interested. And I think there's things that we could do and should be doing, trying to get the island recognised to get the full benefit of being part of a Freeport.
If I could just respond to that. So the legislation was set out for a Freeport. We didn't qualify. We did not have a big enough tax site. We did try. That was done in the previous administration, but we just don't fit the envelope that the government had written out. But we will get proportion of the business rates of all new businesses that's set up within the Freeport. We are actually part of the Freeport, so we'll get some money coming towards us. And as it develops, there'll be hopefully be more opportunities to look at. For instance, these investment zones that were the flavour of the month back in September. We did a lot of work and we put in an application very, very quickly, working with our colleagues across the Solent and at the LEP. So, you know, we try really hard. We will get every penny out there that we're able to apply for, Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Lilly.
Yes, so I've got three different specific questions on this. We'll do them one by one. The first one was Mr. Ashman. You mentioned the green word and you mentioned the green sector within that. And in fact, as you know, I was involved in getting the European Green Foundation back in 2017, who did a study across the Isle of Wight and actually said that the green sector on the island could create 2,000 jobs. They're a Pacific report, which members want, is still available. Report that is clear about that. And we have got, organisations like Vestas and a range of organisations that are doing that or working, innovative businesses like Rapa Nui that are actually using solar energy and within that. So we have a huge movement on the island that can go towards green. And as you mentioned, the low carbon, low case within that. I then point to my question is, why can't Nicholson Road be an eco business park and be innovative, right, within that? Because as you said in this report, there's been lack of commercial interest. Well, I believe there is a lot of interest from people like environmental finance, right, of that. RIDE, as you know, Innovative Ride Town Council has now got a memorandum of understanding with the University of Portsmouth, and they've got a whole kind of green department, business department, working in RIDE to look at various initiatives. And you've got forward-thinking businesses like Hover Travel looking at using solar to actually create hydrogen so that they can be powered. So why can't we now use this opportunity of lack of interest to actually have the Isle of Wight Council working with a proper memorandum of understanding with Rye Town Council and the University of Portsmouth and actually have an exciting eco-business park? We do know that there's been people
Shall we let him answer the question?
from overseas that have been interested in that, because we do need to take up the green mantle and create opportunities and innovation which that site could do and give a return to Isle of Wight Council. That's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think the most crucial part of what you referenced there in your question was the last few words, and give a return to Isle of Wight Council. So I think we have work underway on a full business case for the Nicholson Road development. And that's really to identify the resourcing, borrowing, to actually enable the phase one infrastructure for that site, because all those that did show an interest did highlight the need for some infrastructure support, whether that was from central government or from local government borrowing. So the full business case to support that is currently underway. I think we will expect, as part of that full business case, an up-to-date market assessment, and the original proposition, which you will be aware went to planning committee, which highlighted the green credentials potentially for the site, will be part of that assessment in terms of the options appraisal for the full business case. So hopefully I can give you good news on that in not too distant future.
Next question, Councillor Lilly. Straight to the question.
Question is just on the quick start apprenticeships. I think it's important to put the Isle of Wight councils and the Isle of Wight, so the chambers involved in Kickstart. There were many other organisations doing Kickstart, including Rye Town Council, which actually helped 27 people go on to employment opportunities, specifically 15 within Ryde. In fact, Grace's Bakery and Rye Town Council have really, given futures to young people in the town. So it'd be good if we could actually, this committee could get a wider response of all the other initiatives of the Kickstart and how they benefited young people, and what are the lessons learned out of that. Is that possible?
Absolutely, and would be something we would task our skills board to look at.
Okay, thank you. And my third last question is regarding the Ryde and Newport Heritage Action Zones. The reality is that our high streets and Newport, perhaps Ryde less, but in the last week, Ryde is starting to lose buildings. We're probably going to lose all our banks, right? We've lost 2, right? It seems that some of the banks are choosing to keep one main one in Newport and close others. We've got 2 already large buildings, bank buildings, that are going to be empty. We've lost our only greengrocer in the town, and we've also M&Co, which was the old Woolworths building, is looking of that. So I'm just wondered what's going to be some kind of task force or action. We've been looking at the heritage of improving the high streets, but unless we got people moving into those empty shops, right, those areas are going to die, and we need to take some very proactive to make sure that those buildings, particularly like M&Co, which are huge, right, are not left idle. I know there's been recent planning application idea for that, but I just wanted to say that we've got to be very proactive in this. So what's the answer to that?
I mean, just to comment on the M&Co, I looked at the plan application yesterday, and what they're doing actually is kind of aligned with what we're saying and what nationally is a trend. They're putting accommodation there. They're making smaller units at the front rather than one big unit. Then we all know that smaller units are much easier to let, and they provide opportunities for a business to start up and maybe grow and then move on. So you're getting the vitality of people living there, and you're getting more lettable units. So that's actually, I'd say, real positive. Shame, obviously, for national chain to go, but having that response, I think, is excellent. We've still got big buildings in Newport where we haven't had that response, which I really wish they would. I understand, it's sad about the Barrow boy retiring there and the family not wanting to take it on, but these things are natural changes anyway. And again, that's a really, really good spot with the Barrow boy. So hopefully someone will see that that's a good spot, quite a vibrant, thriving part of pedestrian area of Ryde. So it's always secular. But I think we've still got both houses going, so these issues can be picked up and discussed within the forums and the place plan groups of both towns as well. And we're working obviously in Sandown with the High Streets Task Force, but much of what they say is kind of generic, can be applied to other places as well. So, and now we've got the place planning is sorry, excuse me a minute. Place planning is an important part of our shared prosperity investment, where we've got new team members, and so there'll be extra bodies from Regen working in these localities as well, not only just Ryde and Newport, but also Sandown, the Bay Area, and Cowes and East Cowes as well. I hope that's helped answer your question, Councillor Lilly.
He has, because he's not got any more questions. One question I have got is, one question I do have, and anybody can take this, is in terms of the plan, which you refresh every 3 years, what would you say the banana skins are, bearing in mind all the changes that we've seen over the last few years with the pandemic and the economic situation worldwide? What's going to stop this plan being achieved in terms of, you know, what can the Scrutiny Committee do to help?
That's a really good question. Thank you. I think going back to Councillor Quirk's original intervention around the resourcing and Councillor Jones Evans' response to that, I think the ability to incentivise and also to facilitate opportunities. I think the islands stands up on its own as far as a place to come and invest. We'll do more on that in coming months on promoting the island to an investment portfolio. But then the actual landing and the implementation of an inquiry is the potential banana skin, where in competition with other places, nearby or neighbouring cities, for example, we aren't as fleet as foot or able to offer them maybe the level of incentive that they are, and also the range of property that's available, and also the amount of workforce that's there. So we have to be imaginative in making our pitches, and also to use the resources we've got collectively as a place, not just the council, but our colleagues in the business community acting as reference sellers for what we're doing, and also, you know, encouraging and involving in growing that pool of labour, skilled labour, on an ongoing basis over many years. So I think the biggest banana skin is that enabling of the interest that we do generate, and continuing through our own efforts, our own sites, our own capital assets, to land as many of those opportunities as possible.
Thank you for that. Any further questions or anything else to add? No further questions? Excellent. Members' question time. Anything that we've not covered so far that you, I think Michael's got excess parking on his car, because he's going to be furious if we leave early. So any questions? Members' questions? They don't have to, by any means. Can we go? I know it's absolutely freezing in here, isn't it? So thank you, everyone. Thank you, as usual, to the committee. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your reasoned arguments. Thank you to those who attended for your answers as well. Have a pleasant evening.